Well, I just go with the one that tells me what I want to hear, and, and assume that one's right. And
Mm.
sometimes it is, and then I'm stoked. But sometimes it
Hmm.
isn't. It's an
Hmm.
inexact science.
Hmm. But you're not using the same apps that you used in Alaska for there, right? Because it's just a different situation.
Well, no, it's a universal app. It's just telling me where the auroral oval is, and then it's all the same data from the satellite, so you can get it from multiple different apps. And it's mostly they just give you the information in different ways. It's all the same info, just packaged differently. And so some of them will have more graphic interface that's if you just want to glance and see what it's doing. And then I guess here in Churchill we have the added advantage of having the webcam, so technically I don't have to put on pants to know if the aurora is out. I can just pull that app up on my phone, be watching Yellowstone or whatever, and be like, oh, aurora's out.
You don't care about the KP index, right?
No, not at all. Actually, we prefer lower KP. Yeah. So I think one of the best shows I've ever seen was a KP2 here in Churchill. But there are so many other things that go into it, um, that so people get stoked when they see a high BZ number, or excuse me, a KP number, um, because it's basically an indicator of how far north and south you can see the lights. So like a KP7, if you're in Seattle, you should be stoked like that. You might be able to see it from, you know, northern Washington, Montana, Minnesota, places like that. But here in Churchill, we've had great shows at point 0.3, 0.67 kp. And honestly, if we had like a 7 or an 8, it blows the aurora to the southern sky. Like usually here we see it coming, it comes from the east or the northeast. But if we get one of those big KPs, we actually start looking south for it.
So you'll still see it. It's just in the southern sky.
It's just in this, which opens up a whole different uh, realm of foreground elements. Then you can go out on the river, and the river ice is super cool with the aurora dancing overhead. And I don't know, it's just it's fun. Every show is so different, and I try to tell people that before they get here. And then you come and you have 4, 5, 6 nights of aurora, and it is this every show is completely different, and you never quite there are all these apps for predicting, and yet nothing beats just going and waiting for it. Old school.
You do care about the KP index, and you actually do want a high number because it gives you a whole different outlook on what you're able to shoot.
We can work with whatever. It just makes it even more versatile. So if it's a point 0.3, that's fine. It'll be great. If it's a 7, that's great. We can work with that too. So I guess it's the best of both worlds.
Well, I'll ask you a couple more questions in the show because then we can talk about it. But I'll throw this in the show too. So, Brandon, you got anything before we get started?
Do we want to roll that idea out of homework? I thought it might be good to do wild and exposed homework, right? So for the listeners throughout there once a week, like I want to see you all using rule of thirds. So tag hashtag WE homework with your rule of thirds compositions or something like that. Or I wanted to see separation of backgrounds this week or something like that. Or do we want to refine that and throw it out next week?
Yeah, we should probably build a page for it. We could do a what's up page and then refer to it and kind of explain what we're doing, and then we could show the pictures there. But I think it's a good idea. I mean, the more we can get audiences involved, the better. I think so. That would be kind of, and I think there'd be a certain portion of people out there that would dig having a little assignment to go do.
Sasquatch photos.
Yeah, just how blurry you can get them.
Make it blurry, call it art. Actually, you know what? There is a market for this. Well, not a market, not nothing monetary or anything like that. But I want to see the photos that everybody's got, thousands of, that were almost awesome. The ones of the bear like running at you, and it's like one blade of grass in sharp focus, like right in front of the bear, or like the
Like
the aurora
Ben's
shot with the
story about
one power line going right through it.
We could try that. I could see trying that one out of this first podcast where we just throw it out there as though it's like a homework or an assignment type situation. But go through your archives and pull out that one image that was almost there, and then just tag us on Instagram.
Yeah, just tag WE homework, wild and exposed homework. Well, let me just look up that hashtag before I say that. Hold on.
Yeah, it's probably couples therapy.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny because OMD, Olympus is now OMD, and OMD is also, I guess, a band. So if you go to the hashtag OMD on Instagram, it's like half band pictures and half like birds from people's backyards.
Okay, we're good. There's fewer than 100 posts, so we're good.
And then I guess what we'll do is we'll post. I don't know, how do we do it? Do we post those images on what's up?
I was probably just going to grab them and throw them in our story and do it that way when they post them for that day.
Oh,
Pull them to a reel.
Yeah,
I could, and then just like tunk, 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 and compile it all in the next week or month or something. How long do we want to let it run? I guess every week, right?
if we have a new assignment every week, I guess we can try it for 2 or 3 weeks and see if anybody does it.
Oh, I got like a whole list already built.
Yeah, well, I think having a list is great, but just are we going to get people to play?
Well, and the question is, do we want to have any teaching around it, right?
Any what?
Teaching. Like you guys had you had the composition one before on here. You had the aperture and separation of background, like the whole F8 isn't F8, right? Do you want to have a little, I don't want like 30 minutes of it, but like 5 minutes of explaining the golden spiral, the golden ratio and all those things, right? Like, right.
Yeah. Well, I think you could do that as part of a reel too, right?
But I also like, that's the point of the homework. Like they need to go figure it out so that they're thinking about it to get better, because there's no better way to learn than to have to figure something out yourself
And then put it out for the world to condemn.
criticize. Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's try it. Who cares? And the idea of, I think for a first one that isn't real super technical, it's just the photo that could have been, although this happened.
And we want to know why, what happened that made it not great. Yeah, my favorite elk picture is like this majestic bugle. He's got his head back at like mid bugle, and he's got this big thing of pine needles right on his chest because he's been laying down before. I'm like, I'm letting it ride. I don't care.
No, you need to clone it and cover the whole thing in needles. Embrace it.
And cats.
And cats.
Kittens specifically.
Oh yeah, is it kittens?
Yeah. Little kittens. Once the cats are older, they don't have the same draw.
Unless they're angry face cat.
Well,
Remember the grumpy face one?
Grumpy cat. Yeah. Oh, I bet there's an app for that too.
That's an app that you use for that?
To put the kitties in all the shots?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called InstaKitty.
You're kidding.
No.
Go look at his
InstaKitty.
Instagram. That's full of cats.
Oh, I know. I've seen. It's on the Churchill website.
Yeah, there are some cats that made it into our website.
On like some of the banner images, even.
Welcome to another episode of Wild and Exposed Podcast. Tonight we have an abbreviated crew. We have Brandon coming to us from Denver and Drew from Churchill. How's it going, guys?
It's going great. Got another Aurora time lapse going tonight.
I think that's going to be a broken record for the next 6-8 weeks.
Till April. Yeah.
Yeah.
till it gets too bright. I can't do them anymore.
Is that basically what happens? Is it just the light gets to be too bright?
Yep. Yeah. You just have to stay up later and later and later. I mean, they're always going. It's just a matter of is there too much light in the sky, or are there clouds in the sky? But the northern lights will be going.
So we've talked about it before on the podcast. You're basically level with Kodiak, right? So you do get some pretty long days in the summertime. You'll probably get 20 hours in twilight most of the night?
Yeah, I think technically it's like 19 or 18 hours, 18, 19 hours, somewhere right in there. But we do get night. during the summer. So, or a little bit, but it's just not quite enough. Just not quite dark enough to see the northern light. Or you have to stay up for that like one little 5 minute window where it's dark enough to see them. And I'm
And
not
then your
I'm not that
percentage
crazy.
chance is not that great to during that time to have them show up.
I don't know. I've never done it. I like to think I'm being smart about it and playing the odds.
So, Brandon, you sent me a picture today from a trail cam from where we have our mountain lion stuff of a great big bull elk. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd been getting deer and deer butts, and then in came this nice elk. He was a pretty good one for that area. So I'm excited. We're starting to get some. We've had rabbits and deer, but we finally got some elk. I'd like to see a cat on there, but we'll start with an elk. It was good. I'm happy with that. And the good news is we had the GoPro out there, so we probably got 4K footage of that.
And it was during daylight hours, right? It's not during the night.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that one.
Yeah,
Very
we'll
excited.
throw that picture that we're talking about in the show notes. So if you go to the show notes page for this podcast, you can see that elk. It really is. It's a nice bull for
Yeah.
that area. I mean, we're only talking what from me to drive from my office to where we're at. It's 15 minutes, 20
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah.
So, and I could see it if I had a clear view without trees in the way, I could see where that area is at. So it's
Yep.
pretty cool to have bull elk that close to town.
And he's a big guy. I mean, he's not a huge body, but he had a pretty good rack on him. And I mean, I'd take a picture of him, but I don't discriminate much, also. So
If it sucks in oxygen, you take a picture.
that's fair. Maybe even if it doesn't, sometimes.
I've taken
If
some
it's
pictures of pretty rocks.
well, yeah, there's that. There's that whole landscape thing. So before we get too far and before we introduce our guest, we should cover some of the stuff that we always forget to cover right at the top of the podcast. So Brandon, why don't you lead us through that, and then I'll fill in, or Drew, you can fill in.
Okay, let me see. So, have you talked to Micah Precision lately?
Yeah, so we still have our sponsor promotion that we've always had for not always, but for the last couple of months, which is 50 off of 500. And I talked to him today and I said, is that still good? He's like, yeah, that's still good. But what we did talk about was how can we change it up? What can we do? What can we make that is really kind of intriguing? You know, he's just looking to gain new customers, right? So if we can come up with something cool that maybe it's something we use and we get a really good deal on it, or I don't know. We're working on something. So we should come up with some pretty spicy promotions in the future. He's hot on it.
And are they still? Is the R62 still there? They still
Oh,
have
we
that
didn't
in
talk
stock?
about that. I don't know.
I know they still had some in stock last time I talked to them. So that's their last thing that we talked about, Mike and I. But
That's the new version of the camera, right? So of course they're going to have them.
I would think so. Have you played with that yet?
No,
Me either. I'm a
not at
Sony
all.
guy.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I just have too much already. I don't need another camera.
No, you do.
Yeah.
Just buy it.
I too.
You too, Drew.
It
No.
just takes a long time to get up here to Churchill.
So Drew, we were talking yesterday. We were out setting up these. We were out testing out some new cameras. Brandon and our guest and myself. We were all out shooting. And Brandon looks over at me. He's like, "Man, that Olympus is pretty cool." So we're still on the fence over your system. I mean, that I was so intrigued by it because Lee Hoyt's sitting right there, and he's like the end all be all. He knows every little thing about that camera, so he's like spewing out all this knowledge about these cameras, and I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. Well, that'd be cool." I couldn't tell you one thing that he said right now if you asked me to, but at the time it seemed really cool. And if I didn't have so many cameras already, I'd be like, "I want one."
Well, it's portable. It's great. It's. I mean, I switched. I don't even know when it was. Maybe 2015, and my whole kit because I was traveling a lot at the time and going all these places and back and forth between Alaska and Churchill and Mexico and Jackson and all over the place. And I just needed a kit that was versatile, was weather sealed, and could fit in the overhead compartment on a 737. Like that was my, and it had to feel good in my hand. Honestly, when I was switching from Canon, and at first I was like, oh, I'm going to switch to Sony, and then I went and held those first Sonys, and they were like, the heck is this? And so, and then I said, well, what's that other one? And a couple buddies had who were in a similar situation were using the Olympus, and so I took one of theirs for a test drive. And then they throw all these computational fun things like a built-in digital ND filter and the composite star trails that'll build itself. And then they've had this pre-record feature for other cameras are starting to do it now, but they've had this pre-record feature going for a while and have it dialed that you can take a lot of frames really fast, and they're the ones from before you push the button. So it basically gives you all the shots that were almost awesome, the ones you would have missed if you didn't have it. So, like, I don't know why anybody would go to say like Brooks Falls and not have a pre-record. Like the shot that people have been, they'll sit out there for 10 years trying to get the salmon jumping into the bear's mouth, and with the Olympus, you get it every time. Like it's no muss, no fuss, especially if you're trying to maximize your the bang for your buck. Your 45 minutes on the platform or whatever. Yeah, like I don't see myself switching anytime soon.
So the only real downside is the fact that it's hard to get some of the lenses still, right?
Just the big one, just that 150 to 400 with the teleconverter built in. Um, I do use a Sony for the low light stuff, doing Aurora videos and things like that. But frankly, that's the only camera out there that can do that kind of stuff. So that's the one I use. But but yeah, like I've been super happy with it, and always, and when people ask me for recommendations on gear, I really try to drive home the point. Well, you got to figure out what you need. Make a list of what you want in a camera. It's got to be portable. It's got to be weather sealed. It's got to fit in the 737 overhead compartment, and then get the one that's right for you. You don't have to get the camera that everybody else is getting, because it just might not work for you. And also, I'm being a guide first and a photographer second. Most of my bag is filled with first aid kits and extra layers and things like that. So the camera is kind of the last thing that has to fit in the bag. So portability was paramount for me.
So if it's daytime, you take in the Olympus, or what do they call it, OMD,
OMD, Digital
and
Solutions.
if it's nighttime, you're going to take the Sony.
Yeah, for all my Aurora stuff. Although, shoot, even the Olympus has the star focus. Like, if I have gone out and I do enjoy shooting Aurora with it, because it's got this automatic autofocus feature. You just program a button on the back and you get out, boom, you hit the button, the stars go sharp. Like there's no messing around with infinity or any stuff like that that'll really wreck your night if you mess it up. Like that's a high pressure situation. But no, at the Olympus, you just push a button and boom, there it is. Uh, so I use that quite a bit. I've done some time lapses with it at night, and actually the composite, it'll build a star trail for you in camera. Like it's pretty wild. When did this turn into an OMD ad?
It's pretty.
Oh, I know, but I was intrigued, man, when I saw that camera and we had the representative that was there, and then Lee Hoy was there, and he shoots. I don't know. He must be an Olympus ambassador of some sort, or whatever they call those people, and they both were on and on and on. I'm like, this is sounding better by the minute. And then some of the lenses that they had there were pretty dang cool.
Well, this 150 to 400, which this is a 2x crop, so you can do the math on that. It's long lens, it's all handheld. They've got wicked stabilization. I've never used a tripod with it, I don't think. Never quite felt the need to use a tripod with it, except for some of those nighttime things. And honestly, their 40 to 150 2.8 is one of the sharpest lenses I've seen. Like it is just cut yourself on that thing.
I think that's the one that I was playing with that I was impressed with. and it's
That's
small.
the one I would always bring out for moose. You remember when I was complaining that I couldn't get far enough away from the moose, and then I
Right,
switched to that lens, and it was perfect.
right. Yeah, because you got that range, and it's all well. It's more than an APS-C. It's a
It's a
two
2x,
times.
yeah, yeah.
Well, it is a kind of an OMD ad, but that's all right. I mean, you might as well expose people to. It's like you said, just pick what you want to do, what you're trying to accomplish, and buy that camera that does
Make
that.
a list. Make a list of what you're looking for. Yeah, that's my advice. Pro tip. We'll start with pro tips today. Make a list.
But then you got to go to a camera shop where you got somebody that knows what the heck's going on, so that you can say, "Here's my list. Give me the camera that does all of this." Because there's no way for even I can't tell you all the things that all these cameras do nowadays.
Just call Precision Auto. Precision Auto. Just call Precision Camera. But Precision
Amazing.
Auto does good work too in Anchorage, Alaska. Just saying, if you ever need a
Right,
oil
right.
change.
No, there's a couple of guys down there at Precision. There was one that was at the Houston Expo that we were at, and Brandon and I had a chance to talk to him. And he actually works in the Austin shop, but they brought him down for that expo in Houston, and that dude knew every camera. And he wasn't he an Olympus shooter too?
Was he Fuji or Olympus?
Oh, I don't know. He shoots for the AP, and he was doing stuff for the F1 race that's there in Austin, and he had some images that were just spectacular. And it might have been the Fuji, but either way, I mean, either the Fuji or the Olympus, it's not one of those top two, right? And anytime you see another camera that's producing imagery like that, you're like, it's impressive to see. So they do have some really knowledgeable people down there.
And they're cheaper, so you can buy 3 or 4 of them.
Are they really?
Yeah, I don't even remember what I paid for this last one, but it's their top of the line, and it definitely didn't break the bank.
Well, I guess call Mike at Precision, and then he'll just pawn you off on a camera salesperson. But they're all pretty knowledgeable. All right, so Brandon, what else do we have on the list
All
besides
right.
the sponsorship?
Do you still have open spots on the bear trip, Mike, for the boat?
We do, and I don't know exactly how many, but I know there's spots available on both trips. So it's a little weird because it's double occupancy. So it's either a couple that would sign up and then fill one of the little cabins, or we have to have 2 females or 2 males. So I'm not sure what the numbers are right now, but all you got to do is go to our website, click on the tours, and from there you can figure out what dates work for you. And then all the information is down at the bottom of the page, and you can just call Dave directly, who's putting the whole, basically he takes all the money and he does all the stuff with the trips. He'll tell you where we're at on each trip. But both of these trips are like, the timing is like perfect. So it'll depend on your schedule. If your schedule's open, you want to go, they're both going to be spectacular as far as activity.
Okay. And then how about you, Drew? Do you still have some open spots with your trips?
We got a couple spots left on our Bear Cubs and Borealis tour. So if you're interested in watching going to look for those bear cubs coming out of the den, polar bear cubs, we need to specify. We're just throwing bears out, and we're talking about 2 different species here. So Michael's talking about the brown bears. I'm talking about polar bear cubs coming out of the den. So if anybody wants to go look for polar bear cubs with me, give a shout. We got a couple spots left.
So do you even get to sleep on that trip? Because if you're up all night doing Aurora and then you're out all day looking for polar bear cubs, you better just bring some toothpicks to keep your eyes open.
Right. Well, it's fortunately there's not a bear cub behind every tree. So, so there is some downtime because it is very polar bear centric. We're not cruising around looking for other stuff. We are looking for polar bear cubs. And so yeah, there's some time if you need to grab a nap or something like that, just so you're ready when the shit goes down. Like you need to be well rested for that.
If you want to do the brown bear trip, you just be prepared for bugs. And if you want to do the polar bear trip, be prepared for cold.
But I guarantee there are no bugs.
No bugs
on that trip. Like I will promise you that.
Just bring your puffy pants.
Just bring lots of layers.
All right. And then before we jumped on the podcast, Brandon, you were talking about a new little segment that we should introduce. And what was that?
Yeah. So we're going to start simple. And actually, Drew had a good idea. We're going to start with the wild and exposed homework. And so this homework is going to be relatively easy. We want to see the shots that were almost great. Maybe you had Ben Masters. He talked about this last week. Maybe you had the camera set up on the mountain lion den and it was focused on the tree in front of the mountain lions. Or maybe you have the blade of grass in front of the bear running through the river chasing the salmon. We want to see it. So tag us and hashtag WE homework and then tag us in your post and we will throw it up in the story. And if there's a really good one, maybe we'll talk about it on the podcast.
You'll know these shots. You know these shots. They're the ones you look at and you just go, oh. Like if you've ever made that sound in your photographic career, those are the shots we want to see. Oh. Yeah. Groaners. We want to see the groaners.
That should be the hashtag. Hashtag groaners.
Oh,
Although maybe
we need to check that one
think
first.
probably-
Let's check that one
yeah,
first.
no, let's not do that. Let's do hashtag WE homework.
After the whole sleeping with Ben Masters snafu.
Yeah.
Did we change that?
No. Like I said, you're the only one that were like questioning it. I think you're so sheltered up there in the winter that I don't know. It must have just caught that thing up there.
Well, I mean, wait. Let's read this. Read this title. Let's see.
We know what he does in his winter time. It's not hibernation.
I just revisit group chats with you jokers. So here's the title. Actually, Tanner, you're not biased here. I'm going to read this to you and tell me what you think.
Okay.
Capture wildlife footage while you sleep with Ben Masters.
Oh, I just got what you're thinking.
Yeah, it says capture wildlife footage while you sleep with Ben Masters.
Oh, sleep with Ben Masters.
It's
Yeah,
amazing.
I think there's a punctuation.
See, my whole brain was not reading it that way. The way you read it, it's just like, oh yeah, well, okay, well, I'm sleeping with Ben right now, but I'm getting some awesome photos.
No. Well, I guess.
Yeah,
Well,
that's like we're in a tent together, right?
yeah.
Shot.
Not everybody's got that context.
Oh, I gotcha. All right, I'm gonna have to go change it.
Well, it's too
put a
late now.
comma.
It's out in the world. There's no way.
No, I can change the thumbnail. It's no big deal, and the titles are easy to change.
Okay.
It'll propagate throughout the thing. It might take a while, but
Except we're memorializing it here.
Well, it's so
Yeah,
good. We can't let this pass. Capture wildlife footage while you sleep with Ben Masters.
so okay. How would you say it?
Well, for comedic effect, I'd say it just like that. But capture wildlife footage while you sleep, featuring Ben Masters, or it's the with. I think is the yeah.
I'll just put that like they do in music. I'll put FEAT.
Yes. There we go.
That's amazing.
I just got it. I mean, I got that text from Drew earlier today. I'm like, what is the big deal? I'm thinking, man, he's just out there in the cold way too much. But then when you read it like that, I'm like, all right. While Tanner is dazzling us with stories of just awesomeness, I will go in and change the website right now.
For the kids, for the children.
Yeah, for the kids.
Yeah. It's a family
All right,
show.
but let's go back to WE homework, hashtag WE homework. And
All
then do the shot that was almost there. Or how'd you say it?
Almost awesome wildlife shots.
The almost awesome.
And we want to see the story in the caption. So you're going to have to write a little caption below it because we want to hear the story and the reaction and how sad you were. And then if you got it on a follow-up shot, maybe put that as the second one if you got it.
I just hope people haven't deleted them. That's a definite risk, but they might think, oh, I could save that when Topaz. There's some shots not even Topaz can save. Those are the ones we want.
Yeah, I don't know. If you watched our Lightroom episode I don't know, a couple weeks ago, those guys were able to fix a lot of stuff. I'm like, man, you pretty much want to keep it. I've always kept everything. I have every picture I've ever taken in digital. I don't get rid of stuff. I figure hard drives are cheap. But will I ever go back and look at that stuff? Absolutely not. I probably should cull the whole, you know, just get rid of all the bad stuff. But
Well, Ron and
So wait,
Jason aren't here. Like, we should just have people send in their most messed up photos when the call goes out for Lightroom photos. Let's just have everybody send in their most messed up photos. Lens
the
caps
blurriest
on,
photo.
yeah, kicking
yeah,
the
like
tripod.
half of the tail's cut out and they have to go in and recreate the tail.
So yeah, that's gonna okay. Nobody tell those guys. And next time we do a call for photos, just send in the messed up ones.
So wait, do you have a shot that you can remember off the top of your head where it was almost great?
Yeah. Oh yeah. This was in the year. It was 2004. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, and I was at Wolverine Cove, Big River Lakes, Alaska, and it's boat based bear viewing. And there's the bears will be along the shoreline and they'll jump out at you. And I was working there, so I was out. Maybe it was almost dark, and that was my issue. Is it was just the bear was moving too fast and it was too dark for my old Canon 40D. But this bear dove right at us, and it just was blurry and like no, not an artistic blur, just like ooh, blurry. But the pose, you can tell that the pose is there and the composition is there. It's just super, super, super blurry. It's on a hard drive somewhere. I might be able to dig it up and contribute it to the comp. Is it a competition?
No, it's just a recognition.
Whoever wins gets 50 off of 500 at Precision Camera. We'll throw that incentive out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just we will feature the images on a reel.
or if you want it, get with me and I'll send you a sticker.
All right. Is there anything else before we get to Tanner?
We just did a whole podcast of nothing
I
before we even
know.
got to the meat of it.
But this is
Okay.
the stuff that everybody likes. They're always telling me, "Hey, we like when you guys just jibber jabber."
Ramble on.
Yeah. Is there anything else you can think of, Brandon, that you want to make sure we cover?
No, I think we got everything.
Perfect. So tonight we have a guest who actually we talked about him last week in the podcast, but I don't think I put it in the podcast because it was pre-podcast recording. But I met this young gun while I was out in the field this fall, and then we've since actually been shooting a lot together. And I just thought it'd be really cool as part of our Young Gun series to get him on the podcast and maybe talk about how he got into it, why he's into it, what he's doing to keep in it, and just answer all those questions. And then you guys will, I'm sure, have a bunch of questions for him. So tonight we have Tanner Haver, and you and I tell the story of where we met.
Oh, first, thanks for having me, guys. So I met you in Rocky Mountain National Park on a shoot for Fin and Fur Films, and it was a really cold morning, and it was around 7 in the morning, and I had walked down a trailhead to begin my shoot, and not too long after, Michael had walked down the same trailhead towards me. So it was kind of wasn't I don't think we were expecting to see each other, but it turned out to be a really good thing, and I'm really fortunate that we met each other because I mean we've become pretty great friends ever since, and now I get to spend time with another really great friend of mine I'd like to call Brandon and meet Drew. It's nice to meet you.
Good to
I've heard
meet you as well.
a lot of really good things. So
Yeah, so I'll just fill in a little bit more about that. And like I said, I don't think I talked about it on the podcast with Ben, but I think I was just telling Ben. I don't think we recorded it. But there's a spot where we all know where they all kind of hang out in Rocky Mountain National Park. And you always try to get away from the people. And the spot that I was thinking about was a good way to get away from the crowds. So I go over there and I go tooling down the trail, and I'm carrying that big camera because I was kind of working. Tanner was actually actually out there working, making a day rate. I was out there kind of making a day rate, but if the day didn't work out, then it was like no big deal. It was one of those days where if you got it, it was going to be great. If you didn't, no big deal, right? But I'm packing that 50 to 1000 lens on a red, and I'm using this big O'Connor tripod. I mean, the whole package is, I don't know, I'm guessing 70 pounds, 75 pounds. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm not going to go that far, but I only have to maybe go a half mile down the trail with this thing over my shoulder. I mean, carrying 75 pounds in a pack is doable for a lot longer, but I'm just throwing the camera over my shoulder and I'm headed down the trail. And I get out there, and you never see anybody else out in the woods with one of these lenses just because they're so specialty and they're so expensive. You just don't see them. They're just not a common thing unless you're on these great big high production value shoots, right? So I get out, I come around the corner, and I see a 50 to 1000 lens sitting there. And then I see some dude operating it and shooting exactly what I had envisioned shooting. And I'm like, who is this dude? He's taking my spot. And then we really didn't say anything to each other for probably the first, I don't know, a couple of hours. I mean, we acknowledged each other and just give it the old, head nod or whatever, but we're busy shooting. And then after it was all over, then Tanner came over and he's like, hey, what's going on? He's super nice guy, right? And we just started chatting it up. And then you find out how young he is, and he's out there actually shooting, making a day rate. I thought, man, this is a pretty cool little story here. So that's how we met. And then since he lives here in Denver and he's going to school, he's got a little bit of free time. So I just said, if you get a chance, come out with us. And we're working on this mountain lion camera trap project, and then we go out and shoot some other stuff. So we've actually been hanging out quite a bit since then. So give us a little bit of your background, Tanner. Like how did you get into this, and how did you get to the point where it's like, hey, I want to be a wildlife cinematographer?
Well, all right. So for the longest time, I've really been in love with just photography in general. It all started. My grandpa's my best friend, and every summer since I was little, actually 5 years old to be exact, he would take me to Yellowstone, and we'd spend a week together or 2 weeks together. And as the years progressed, we ended up starting to spend more and more time in the park every summer and kind of sharing really, really valuable memories. And I remember my first camera. It was just like a small Kodak still camera, where you could take the camera home and pull the memory card out and literally print photos in the basement from what I took. Ever since then, especially in just such an incredible place like that, it really just stuck with me. So as the years progressed and we started staying for longer periods of time, I started to kind of splurge into better equipment slowly. So he ended up getting me my second camera was a Canon TX50. It was like a power shot camera, and that was the most incredible thing in the world for me. And I remember at a really young age thinking, man, what's this little red button on the back of the camera? Just being pretty unfamiliar with new equipment. And I mean, you're so little that you really don't know, but I mean, because you just want to be out there hanging out with your best friend, which in that case was my grandpa, and taking pictures. And I started to use the little red button a little more. And then I really found out that, oh, well, this is making worlds of difference. And I like this more because I feel like it tells a story better. And I think my mindset was more like, I think it does more justice than just a photo at the time, just because I liked to see it again, and I'd like to witness it again. Even when we went back to where we're staying, grab the camera, turn it on, play it back, and watch what I just got to shoot, even though it wasn't very great. But then as time went on, and I started to get a little older, around the age of, I would say, 10, 11 years old, I started to see this guy in the park a lot with my grandpa. He was almost like every bear we saw, or every just anything that was incredible and just cool to witness in general, even if it was just something scenic. I was just seeing him a lot, and I remember asking my grandpa, who's that? Like, I want to know who that is. I mean, this enormous camera, fluid head tripod, the works, Cine lens, enormous Sony brain. He was an older gentleman, and over the course of time, paying more attention to that, I would see him more and more and more until I finally had to ask somebody else who he was, and that same individual today has turned out to be an extremely large influence in my life. His name's Bob, and Bob Landis is certainly my idol, and has kind of carried the motivation and the just the awe-inspiring, like it's who I want to, like who I was aspiring to be from a young age. So after that, I mean, I don't think I took a picture again, after getting to meet him for the first time and talk to him and small talk here and there. It's hard talking to somebody that you look up to that much, especially when you're that little, because you're nervous and you don't know what to say. And I mean, you don't want to bother him at the same time. But yeah, he's certainly a legend in my mind, and my number one as far as influences and just idols go that got me started in it. But by
Hold on, before you go too much further. So, if you're not familiar with Bob Landis, all you got to do is go and look at his IMDb page, and I have never looked at it, but it's got to be several pages of, maybe when you guys can look it up. But the guy's been shooting, I don't know. So you're what, 22 now, Tanner?
Yep, I am 22. I turned 23 in May.
So 10 years, well, let's just say 23. So 10 years ago was 2013. I was there probably in 2000. I don't even know. Let's just say the early 2000s, and Bob was out there. I mean, the guy is like a staple I think he lives in Gardner, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. I don't know where, but I know he does live in Gardner.
Yeah. So Bob is just a guy who gets up every day, gets his camera, and he is out in the park. And some of the most epic footage you've ever seen on a lot of these wildlife programs from Yellowstone, he's shot a lot of it. And it's all, he owns his own camera, and I think he's working on his own time, and he did a lot of stuff as stock. But now that people know who he is and what he's doing, I'm sure the guy gets called all the time just to, hey, can you shoot blah, 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 some obscure thing in Yellowstone? And he's probably seen it, and chances are probably pretty good that he's actually shot it previously. So he just a really, I mean, to have an idol like that, he's one of the best.
So get this.
His
Oh, did you pull it up too?
Yeah. Go ahead,
Oh,
Drew.
well, I was going to say his earliest credit on his IMDb here is The Elk of the Northern Herd in 1978.
Yeah. So the guy has been doing this I think he was a school teacher prior, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Prior to being a full-time filmer.
yeah. I do believe he was a school teacher for a long time, and then finally, I might be mistaken, around the reintroduction of the wolf to Yellowstone, solely contributed. I mean, was able to just filmmake and document wildlife full time, which is just incredible because he, as far as I'm concerned, has more free roaming wild gray wolf footage than anybody, and the behavior that comes along with it, the predation, the pack rivalries, even if it's just, I mean, something as bizarre and as crazy as gray wolves killing coyotes. Bob has just limitless, I mean, just incredible stuff. And one of my favorite shots that comes to mind actually of his, and this is one of the first shots that I saw of his, coming to find out that he shot it. That, I mean, it was just I was explosive with excitement and kind of just really excited to see. I do believe I saw it on a PBS Nature special. There's a coyote running with a large piece of meat in its mouth that it had just carried away from a carcass, and he's kind of traversing through the snowy landscape in Yellowstone, and an eagle is flying behind the coyote and swoops down and manages to completely remove the piece of meat from the coyote's mouth and fly away. Kind of like it, just out of nowhere, the coyote kind of takes a couple lunges and steps towards the eagle and tries to jump up into the air and retrieve the piece of meat that was just stolen from it, and couldn't, and failed. But to me, that certainly makes it into my top 10 greatest shots ever.
That's the shot I think of too. That's exactly, I was going to mention that. I'm glad you did, because it's one of those deals where that coyote had no idea what was about to happen. And as soon as that eagle took it, that coyote for a second is just like looking around like, what the, it's just that, what just happened? And then obviously the bird is gone, and that coyote's like, well, okay, I guess I got to go back and get some more victuals from the kill that was going on. But it's pretty spectacular shot. So how many pages of IMDb does he have? It's got to be
It's just
several, right?
one big one.
Well, yeah, I guess if you spread it out.
It scrolls. You got to scroll to see it all. I'll
Yeah.
say that much.
Yeah, he's done it.
But the latest one was the Wilder Yellowstone, that TV special.
Is that, what channel is that on, or what does it say?
It's on
The writer is Simon Boyce. It's AMC Plus, I believe.
All right, so Tanner, take us on from there. So well, I guess, do you guys have any questions so far for Tanner?
So it sounds when you first ran into Michael, and Michael ran into you. It's kind of a disappointing situation for both of you. I'm really glad you could overcome that bummer of running into somebody in your spot in the woods.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I mean, I was actually kind of intimidated, just because, it's not intimidated, but just, I mean, I'm out there. I look up to many more than just Bob, and Michael being one of those people. And I mean, yeah, when you see an O'Connor fluid head like that, you know that, I mean, it's getting real. So, and like there's always a bigger bear in the woods. But yeah, it was a really incredible experience, and yeah, I think that everything happens for a reason, and it was a really cool opportunity to just be out in the field shooting and doing what I love to do, and being paid for it, which is just more than what I could ask for within itself, just because I love to be out there anyway and doing it, and make new friends and meet new people along the way that are influencing me even further till this day. So yeah, it was really special, and such a beautiful place too, and filming. I mean, one of the greatest spectacles in North American, um in nature's history in North America, or just in the Wild West. So yeah, it was really awesome.
Did you get the shot? What were you trying to? Were you trying to get a fight? Were you shooting B-roll? What were you doing?
Um,
If you can talk about it.
yeah, I don't think I don't think I can
Okay.
share that. I wish I could,
Okay.
but I can't, unfortunately.
It's all
And
good. All good.
but no,
Well, and then let me fill in too. It wasn't a bummer at all. I mean, to have him there, I mean, it was the best spot. He had found the best spot to shoot based on what we were shooting, and so it was actually kind of cool. It was, the only thing it was shocking to see somebody else carrying that same kind of camera gear out there, just because it's not common. You just don't see it. So what was cool about it is to see someone so young out there that is actually making it happen. And that's where I was like, okay, this guy's on his way. And then to come to find out that he's actually making a day rate already at 22. I mean, man, if I'd have been able to do this stuff at 22, I was like, what's an f stop? You know?
yeah, and
Well, and
So
we can tell you're kindred spirits because the first thing you both noticed was the cameras, the lenses.
yeah, but no, he definitely had the spot picked out. I can tell you what Ben told us is they were filming out there, and you were filming for yourself, Tanner.
yeah,
So you were just up, I think, doing your own thing.
yep,
And Ben got in a situation where he was getting what he was in the right spot, but he wasn't getting the shot that he wanted. And so he climbed up a hill or something because he thought, well, I think I can get this shot from this vantage point better than where I'm at. And when he got up there, you were already there. And that he was so impressed by that. He says, he's like, here's this young guy that's got the spot that was in my mind all along, and this young guy is already there. So I think that impressed him so much that's I think how you ended up working for him is he knew that you had that vision to be in the right place at the right time.
yeah. It certainly caught me off guard, meeting Ben and his shooter Ryan. Such great guys, and I mean, I learned so much, and I mean, the time spent with both of them and the opportunity that I received was incredible, just because I learned so much more than I had already known, and that I thought that I could in such a short period of time. And I remember seeing them the evening before, and it was a really great experience to just be a part of something like that. And words are it's hard to describe. I mean, just how much effort you put into something sometimes before it starts paying off. But at the end of the day, I love to do it, and I'll do it no matter what. And we were shooting. I remember I've told you the story, but we were shooting one of the larger elk in the area, and yeah, that morning I ended up running into them. Was certainly special. I remember being positioned on a rock and hearing somebody walk behind me and say, "Well, what do we have here? Another video guy." And I didn't know who was talking to me, and I didn't know what was going on. And I kind of looked up and stood up and shook his hand. And I mean, that kind of turned out to be the beginning of one of the coolest experiences of my life. So I'm extremely fortunate and thankful for that.
So far, I would just throw in so far.
So far, yeah.
You're so young. You're going to have so much cool stuff happen if you stay on this path. So when you're out there shooting for yourself, and maybe you can talk about a little bit of the gear you're using, and what are you trying to accomplish when you're out there just shooting for yourself?
What I'm trying to accomplish out there shooting for myself is, I mean, it's a lot of things. One of those things is just happiness and doing something that I know I would drop anything to do at any time if I was given the chance, and just do it. And I mean, there's really nothing that makes me happier than being out in the field and sticking my head in a camera and just kind of getting lost and shooting something, you know, spectacular, even if it's not incredible. Like, I just like being out there and spending the time and doing doing anything that I can to put something together to show others and to tell a story, even if it's just you know a grizzly bear and its cubs, and she's nursing and she's grazing and the cubs are wrestling, and I just really like being out there. But going back to Bob, it was one of those things that I knew. It's kind of a sentimental thing for me too, just because it's the memories that I'm never gonna lose. Spending time in the field with my grandpa. I mean, he's getting older now, and I mean, without him, to clarify, more than anybody, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now, and I wouldn't be where I'm at. You know, speaking in a position of just wanting to do it and being out there and doing it and putting in the effort. And I wouldn't care about the natural world, or the wildlife. In my opinion, I don't think nearly as much as I do now, without my grandpa as an influence. So it's been a really, really interesting experience and journey thus forth. I was entirely self-taught up to just a few months ago when I met Ben and Ryan and Austin and the incredible team at Fin and Fur. And since then, I've grown a lot, and I've become that much better of a shooter in my opinion, just because it's nice getting to learn from somebody that knows so much more than you do, that's made the mistakes maybe here and there, that's had the successes, and says, well, hey, well, there's an easier way to do this, or there's an easier way to do that, or this is how I would do this, and this is how I wouldn't do that. It's kind of like getting to meet you and Brandon and everybody else too. I'm still sucking in that same all this information like a sponge, and I'm still trying to add it to my arsenal and stack as much ammo as I possibly can to just become a better storyteller and a shooter in general.
So Drew, you had a story. I remember on a podcast we did before you were a host on the show. You were a guide before you were a photographer.
Well, no, I got into photography because my parents had owned a small town newspaper, and I had access to a dark room. And so when my mom gave me her AE1, I could go roll my own film and I could develop all the stock, film strips, and I couldn't touch the fancy new photo paper, but all the scraps and stuff. So I could. So that was yeah, it was all. So the photography came first, and then I kind of didn't do anything with it, and then got back into it when I started going to cool places. But
What about you, Brandon? How did you figure out that, hey, you can actually make a living shooting wildlife?
Uh, I don't know if you can. Like, I don't know if I will. To be honest, like all my cash flow's not wildlife. Um, no, there was. Let's see. It was a behind the scenes of. It was one of those early documentaries, and there was like the little clip on the VHS of like the people that filmed it. And I remember this. There was this gal that had this setup, and it was a giant camera at the time. And they mounted it to the Hilux or the Land Rover or whatever they were driving at the point, and they would roll her out on like this telescoping system. So she had a full left to right like system that she could spin around on. And I was like, I want to do this. And she was like filming a cheetah running, right? And I was like, forget the Army and Navy. Like, I want to go run this camera through this like system. And that was the first time that I was like, maybe I could do that. And then I got delusions of grandeur and tried to go into the corporate world. And but yeah, that was the first kind of wildlife. And I grew up in the sticks, right? So we had a mountain lion den on the backside of the mountain that we grew up by, and we'd get calls at the house. Oh, there's a mountain lion in the area. Keep your kids inside. And so my mom would be like, "Okay, boys, you can't go outside." And then we'd go outside and play flashlight tag, and she'd get really mad. We're all live. Well, or maybe not. And there was 4 boys originally, and now there's only 3. I don't know.
Tanner, so you've decided that this is what you want to do. You want to become a wildlife cinematographer. There really is no clear roadmap for it, but you've put yourself in the position to meet some good people, have some mentors. What's the roadmap look like now? I know you're in school right now and you're getting a degree in biology, and you've got a minor, or you're going after a minor in GIS too. So that, of course, is important. But then, what is your process after that, or do you even know?
I know because I know it's what I want to do, and I'm still just trying to really just shoot as high as I possibly can, and really aim as high as I possibly can. But I think the most important thing for me, and this goes for anybody, also is just spending the time in the field. The more you expose yourself to the natural world, no matter where you are, it could be, even if it's just a nature trail in a city park, or even better, a national park, and just really putting the time in and the effort and being out there as much as you can. Best case scenario, every single day. Eventually, it's going to pay off just through the imagery itself, and you're really doing yourself such a big favor at the end of the day, just because you're spending time in something that might not be here in 1,000 years, or whatever it might be. We're not going to live forever, and if you find it valuable to immerse yourself in nature and experience things that you've never experienced before, and see things you've never experienced before, I really think that's the most crucial and beneficial part of doing it. Just being out in the field and just shooting and trying to tell a story on something, even if it's just a bird, or even if it's just a rodent, or whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be a grizzly bear, and it doesn't have to be a gray wolf, but just dependence on where you are. I think spending time in the field is the most important thing to do.
What's your favorite species to film right now?
So my favorite species to film right now is the grizzly bear. The grizzly bear has always been my all-time favorite animal. And this is from when I was, again, you know, small, 8, 9, 10 years old. I actually remember the first time I saw my first wild grizzly bear in the park with my grandpa, and that is an experience I will never forget. It was in Hayden Valley. It was not too far from Elk Antler Creek, and it was around I'd probably say 1 or 2 in the afternoon. I just remember it being really, really cold outside. I had fallen asleep in the truck. Man, I was probably only 6 years old. And we had driven from the western part of the park, so the Swan Lake Flat, the Norris area, back through Hayden Valley to Cody, where we were staying at the time. And I just remember waking up and my grandpa's kind of just nudging me and telling me, hey, there's a bear. And this is when I had the Kodak. And I just remember being so ecstatic. He had a rack. He drove a Dodge Dakota at the time. So it had a toolbox. He built custom homes for 40 years. Now he's a school bus driver, which is great because he gets the summers off and we get to spend time with each other and we get to go back to the park. And I remember climbing in the back of the truck and standing on top of the toolbox in the back so I could see over the sagebrush to where the bear was, and kind of using the rack as like a platform to lean up against and take pictures with and do all sorts of great stuff. I don't have that picture anymore. I mean, it's priceless. I wish I did. I remember that wasn't the only time I used the bed of the truck as kind of like a standing platform to photograph animals. It was kind of a staple until he stopped building homes and I got older. And now he just drives a Toyota Tacoma, and we do things different ways. But it was incredible, and it was the perfect thing at the time. So
Well, then with all your stories, I half expect like David Attenborough to walk up at the end or something.
I mean, that wouldn't that be cool? I mean, speaking of idols and people I look up to, that's certainly one of them. But yeah, the grizzly bear is certainly my number one. And wolves and just North American wildlife in general. The West has so many incredible things, and there's so much that I want to see still, and be a part of and shoot. I got some really, really cool stuff this past spring of a couple grizzly bears in courtship together in the park. So I'm excited to continue working on that and just reliving it every time I edit. It's the best part. You get to sit there and watch it again and just be there again and just witness something really unique. I mean, especially when it comes to behavior and that kind of stuff, it's hard to beat when it's your favorite animal ever. And then they're doing things that you rarely get to see in an area that, I guess it's a better way of saying it, in a place that you rarely get to see that.
And what are some of the species that you want to go and film that you haven't filmed yet?
I'm pretty simple. I would be willing to shoot anything just because I'm fascinated by so much. But speaking of polar bears, Drew, I would love to shoot polar bears. That's certainly a bucket list for me, a bucket list animal for me.
Well, come on up. I know where they are.
Hey, if you're offering, I mean, I love. I mean, I'm just such a bear guy, and they have fascinated me. I mean, in every way imaginable and possible. Like, I go to sleep and all I dream about is bears, and I wake up and all I'm thinking about are bears. The Kodiak brown bear is another one that's on my bucket list that I would love to be able to shoot and spend time with. But just generally speaking, a creature that, and this is pretty far fetched from bears, more closely related to cats. A creature that I've been fascinated with forever has been the spotted hyena. That's an animal that I certainly wouldn't mind spending time in the field with, especially if lions or African painted dogs or anything else out there were involved. So, but yeah, I mean, I love elk. I love moose. I'm willing to shoot anything and everything, and I do, especially if there's the potential of witnessing something that's rarely seen, or that you just might not see every day. I mean, it could be silly. I mean, it could be like this past spring is a perfect example. Actually, do you know what a sandpiper is? I was in the park with my grandpa, and there's this sandpiper we drove by in the northern range of Yellowstone, and the sandpiper was on the ground, acting like its wings were broken, and it was paralyzed, and it was kind of just flopping around and screeching in front of a bison that was grazing maybe only a foot away from its nose. And I didn't know, like, what that was about, or what was going on there. Well, apparently,
Nest.
right, when a sandpiper feels like something is getting too close to its nest and it has chicks and it feels like the chicks are threatened, it acts like it's injured to pull whatever it is away from the nest so that the chicks aren't consumed or lost or whatever it is. So yeah, it was really just crazy to see. I mean, we have sandpipers here. I have them in my backyard. They're everywhere here in Colorado, but just to see that, I'm like, holy cow, it's acting like it's paraplegic and it's injured to try to get these grazing bison away from its nest when really, I mean, at the end of the day, the bison didn't mind at all that it was doing that. I mean, it just kept grazing and eventually walking over the bird and making its way down the valley. So that was one of those things that, I mean, you just don't think you're going to see it. And it's so small, but at the same time, it's so spectacular. Like you see something like that, and I mean, I thought it was a piece of trash driving by, and I was gonna jump out and go grab it, and then I pulled over in a pullout and stopped and looked and was like, "That's a bird. That's not a piece of trash." And it's just kind of screeching and acting like its wings are broken, and yeah, it didn't do much to dismay the bison from removing themselves from the nesting area, but
That's
it was
cool.
something. So
That's really cool. And then what? I see a big tripod back there with a fluid head. What are you shooting with today or nowadays?
the first professional camera setup that I purchased was almost 3 years ago. I shoot with a Canon C300 Mark III and a Sigma 60 to 600 millimeter telephoto lens. The fluid head I'm using behind me, as you can see, it's a Sackler fluid head with aluminum legs. But yeah, I mean, it's turned out to be a really great camera for me, especially just teaching myself or when I mean I'm always learning, continuing to teach myself how to hopefully just shoot pro cinema. I mean, I it's great. So yeah, it's a Canon C300 Mark III with an expansion unit, 60 to 600, the fluid head behind me, and I use a Zacuto Z Finder now. I have a monitor too that I use, and aside from that, it's a larger monitor. But yeah, it's proven to be a really great setup, and it's really proven to help me grow along the way and just familiarize myself with different gear that's completely foreign opposed to using like a handheld camcorder or or just a Canon TX50 or so yeah, it was an extremely large jump. I jumped from a handheld camcorder that I was using on a spotting scope tripod to this a few years ago, and the learning curve that came with that was it was interesting. I mean, you're gonna do it wrong, and you will do it wrong. But with enough dedication and determination to figure out what you have and learn how to use it and apply it to shooting out in the field. I mean, it's just what you got to do.
Did you watch that series, America the Beautiful, with that bear series that Doug Gardner shot? Have you had a chance to watch that?
Yeah, and that was incredible.
That was shot on that Sigma,
Yeah,
that 60 to 600. It's incredible.
yeah, and the 60 to 600, I have heard it from many, but I literally, if done right, cannot tell a difference in between using that lens and the CN20 and in set circumstances. I mean, it's an incredible lens, and to anybody out there that is looking towards purchasing just a universal lens that's great for filming wildlife or even taking photos, I would highly recommend it. It's a heavily used lens by many, in the industry and just all over the place. And I think it's got to be one of the more popular lenses out there.
It's the poor man's CN20.
The poor man's CN20, and to tell you the truth, I mean it's incredible. I will use that lens certainly or a lens just like it. I want to make sure I always have one. I'll probably use it for the rest of my life. It's I love it.
Did they just announce like a new one, or it was on the Sony rumors page today, or officially announced new Sigma 60 to 600?
They may have made the the Sony mount finally,
No,
because I
that's
don't
probably
believe
what
they
it
had that
is.
one yet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I think we heard something where they might be coming out with one that's a little bit lighter. Maybe it was a just different construction or something. But no matter what, it's awesome. And the gear you're using is perfect. And the name of the game for you right now and for anybody is just to learn how to tell those stories. You know, the whole sandpiper thing is awesome. I mean, how many people that spend time in the woods, you see them all the time and you see that behavior and you kind of know what's going on, but there's a huge portion of the population that has no idea. You know, they legitimately think that that bird is actually hurt, right? So if you can go out there and tell that story in a sequence type situation where you can get your wides and your mediums and your tight and the interaction between two different animals, and I mean, if you can do that, then you definitely have a future in this business, right?
I sure hope so. You know, it's and talking and getting to meet Doug, such a cool thing. And what he shot on America the Beautiful was just it was spectacular. It's just stuff like that that's, I mean, amazing. And you know, telling a story for me is I'm starting to figure out it's the reason I love to do it so much. Or I started figuring this out probably like a year and a half ago, just because people that can't be out there, or people that might not be able to spend enough time out there, even if they want to, like they should be able to still see that too, and they should still be able to, even if it's just on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook or any social media platform. I mean, I think it's so important, from an educational standpoint, and just as like a wildlife lover, and even if you just like nature or hiking or whatever it is, and you like watching documentaries or TV shows, I think it's so special, especially when it's something that, I mean, people spend so much time looking for or trying to get or trying to shoot, and they never do, and then eventually it slips up, and then you can share it with so many different people instead of just yourself or the people that were standing next to you at the time that were lucky enough to witness it. So it's kind of like the bears this spring that I shot. You know, I never thought that I would see something like that in Yellowstone, just because it was. I mean, it was so spectacular. I mean, you and it's seen. You know, I'm sure just like it in different areas and different places in the world, but in Yellowstone, I think that's what made it so special for me. Was, I mean, you're getting to see two bears in courtship and mating, and it's, you know, the boar's cuddling with the sow, and then they're rolling over and they're wrestling with each other, and then they're chasing each other through a snowfield, and you know, all these crazy things. So I mean, that's what I do it for, is just the stuff that, I mean, you can't even put a price tag on it. It's just special to be there and be able to experience it for yourself.
I forgot that we went and had dinner with Doug. I totally forgot about that. But Doug was he had left his truck at my house because was going back to South Carolina. He didn't want to drive to South Carolina and then drive back here because he's got to go back to Montana. And the night he dropped my truck off, or his truck off, I called up Brandon and I called up Tanner and I said, "Hey, let's go to dinner with Doug." And you guys know Doug. I mean, you've listened to him enough on the podcast. He's got a million stories, right? So we went over what should have been like an hour long dinner, ended up being 3 hours of Doug telling his stories of everything from, I don't know, stories about the Queen of England to whatever. I mean, it was just the whole story. I mean, it was awesome. It was just a lot of fun.
And I'm taking his Metamucil advice. I mean, after seeing that the other day, I was like, man, he's got it figured out. I mean, how else are you going to stand in the swamp and not
for
be able to
42
move and be
days.
very flexible all day filming black bears without it? Like,
Well, for those that haven't heard it, he was on the podcast. Go listen to it. It was episode 236. And what a story of just he's
Perseverance.
yes, 42 days for 6 minutes, right? So, yeah, what a story. Uh I have a question for you though, Tanner. So you're taking all this footage, right? You're filming. What are you doing with it? Are you posting it to social media? Are you posting it to YouTube or Instagram? Or are you just kind of sitting on it and enjoying it for yourself? What do you do with it?
Right now, I'm kind of just I've just been really accumulating as much as I possibly can and kind of hiding it in a sense. I've been working with it and I've been editing what I can, and you know, I haven't put anything on social media in over a year, but I am planning on finishing some projects and putting them on Vimeo, on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, what have you. Anything and everything I can to show everybody all the cool things I've been experiencing and getting to witness. And you know, there's a couple projects that I'm currently putting together that I'm really excited to show everybody, just to tell a story and to get people to hopefully appreciate a lot. You know, just continue to appreciate is a better way of putting it. The natural world and the wildlife we share it with.
So going back to our wild and exposed homework, and our almost this week's theme is almost awesome wildlife shots. And I know you're a film guy, you're a video guy, but are there any sequences, or I mean, you heard us discuss the criteria for this. Are there any things that come to mind readily that you're just like, oh, that would have been almost awesome?
There certainly is.
Or do you just nail it every time?
No, I wish. If I did, I'd probably be a lot further than I am right now. But yeah, not at all. One thing that does come to mind is it was in the fall of 2020. It was right after a grizzly bear had just taken down a 6x6 bull elk in the Yellowstone River. It was probably 8 days after it happened, and I was there on location shooting, and there ended up being 2 bears after 8 days that visited the carcass, which was incredible because I mean it was practically at that time. I mean this went on for almost 2 weeks, but it ended up being literally just skull, antler, and hide at the end of it. And 2 of these bears ended up, well, both of them, the one that took down the 6x6 and his rival that ended up coming in and taking over, got in an altercation, and it happened so fast. I remember the carcass was up on the bank of the Yellowstone, and down in the water, the bear that had taken down the elk was in the river, and the bear that had taken it from him was up on the bank with the carcass. And the bear that took it down was kind of just inching in, and waiting through the water to try to see how close he could get because he'd already been run off a few times by this older, more experienced bear that had a little more grit than he did, which is hard to believe considering, you know, he's the one that took that soul. But I just remember that bear shot down the hill into the river so fast I missed it. And I mean, it was hard to gain my bearings because I mean, all it was splashing and water flying, and I mean, just the screams and just how loud they were. I was amazed. You could feel it in your chest.
Who was screaming?
The bears.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, like screaming at each other over, you know, their prize, and it was over much faster than you'd expect. It never came to like a latch or like a total just fight, but it was enough to really, it could have made something really cool. But I mean, at the end of the day, what can you do?
Well, you could have had an Olympus.
Yeah, I could have.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I wish my camera had pre-record. Holy cow! Speaking of pre-record, Canon, you need to get on that. I mean, it's
Well, can we pick on that a little bit though? In order to do the pre-record, don't you have to have a half shutter press on it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you still have to be sitting on your tripod with a shutter half pressed, right?
Well, or
So you're still
on
you're
your
still sitting
phone.
there like
wireless connection with your
But you're
phone. You're scrolling YouTube and oh, okay, there you go. Boom, got it. Check. Going home.
but it's not like a pre-record where it's like
No, it's
running.
not. No, it gives you like you can get like well, it's fast enough. You get like the 50 shots from before you push the button, but you do have to have it. You have to tell it to be doing that. It's not.
But it's
that
like
smart.
30 frames a second, isn't it?
It's really it's pretty fast.
So you got 2 seconds of pre-record.
Yeah. What else do you do?
You need
I
a
get
red that
I
has
get 10. I get 10 with the red right now.
Speaking of
So here's the deal that goes into that, though. I think, you're getting a degree in biology. You also are spending tons of time in the woods. Very, very few people can be ready for that type of behavior. I think there's a certain part of the population of wildlife cinematographers they see that behavior. Drew could probably figure that out pretty quickly. He spent so much time around bears that when you see just some of those signals that they're giving off, you just have that, okay, something's going to go down. I better be ready, or be a wide enough shot where you're like, I'm just hitting record because I'm just going to get a wide, because it's impossible to follow a bear just running a million miles a minute. But you spending the time out there is what it takes. So with that, what advice do you have for young photographers or videographers that want to get into this business? What advice do you have for them?
the advice that I have, just do it. I mean, just no matter what anybody says, even if it's your parents or, I mean, because at the end of the day, it's going to get expensive depending on how obsessed and in love with it you really are. Who cares what anybody says? Just go out there and do it, and put in the effort and put the time in and find something that you like to shoot and in an area you like to be in. Really, it boils down to, I think, just caring. With me at least, I mean, I've literally gotten so obsessed with it that, I mean, it's only been a couple years, and it's a hobby that's certainly just spiraling and going to continue to spiral out of control. I think that, don't let anybody get your hopes down or anything either, or knock you off the rock you're trying to get on top of, because, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are going to do it and are going to try, and really, it's just, if you haven't made up in your mind that this is what you want to do, and this is what you're going to do, and this is what you care about doing and love doing and you're passionate about doing, then don't let anybody stop you. Not even yourself. I mean, who cares? Go out there, spend the time in the field, learn how to use new equipment, immerse yourself around people that you might be fearful of talking to or introducing yourself to the first time, or getting to know, because they have nicer equipment than you do, or because they're busy shooting, or whatever it might be. I mean, get out there and get to know new people. And really, I mean, that comes with just being in the field. And I mean, there's so many benefits to being in the field, especially in a national park or anywhere. I mean, not only do you have the potential of filming something, really cool, and even if it's not really cool, I mean, there's so many people that you can surround yourself by that might know more than you, and you can just learn things and take things from them, even if it's just, you know taking notes visually and looking at people's setups and how they did things and how they're using things, and maybe, I mean, even just movement, different positions they're taking to get certain shots. And I truthfully believe it just boils down to, I mean, you gotta love it, and you gotta want to do it, and you gotta be obsessed with it, because if you're not, I mean, there's gonna be the low points, and I have them every day, and I have them all the time. You're gonna do things wrong. I do. I do every day. I do. I mean, it's crazy. But with every failure is a success in my eyes, because now you know better, and now you know what you can do to hopefully make something better, to apply the next day to get what you're looking for, especially if something like that incredible happens. Um, yeah, at the time with the bear thing, I was kind of beating myself up, and of course you are. It was one of the first times my C300 was out in the field too. Learn how to use your equipment before you take it out into the field, like the back of your hand. Don't just take it out into the field when two bears are on a carcass, because then you might miss something cool. But I did get some brownie points. Speaking of Bob, I did remember to swing by him after that had happened, and everything was gone, and ask him if he got it, and he missed it too. So that made me feel a little better. But yeah, I mean, such a legend. And I mean, that guy, is the living, walking, breathing example of what I'm talking about. He outworks everybody. That's why he's received the shots he's gotten, solely due to just, I mean, just so much hard work and so much time and energy and the hours and just all this time out in the field. And he has some shots that'll never be rivaled, due to just the passion and love that he has for just doing it and being out there and exposing himself to what could happen. And I mean, just look at the incredible things that he's been able to show so many people, and these stories he's been able to tell. It's amazing, and I love it. And yeah, he's certainly, I mean, in my opinion, one of the greatest wildlife cinematographers of all time. I mean, I view his work as kind of, it's perfect. I mean, there's, in my eyes, nothing's wrong with any of it, just because, I mean, he's such a great shooter, and he's done so much to do that. And it started by just picking up a camera and going out into the field and making a habit out of it and falling in love with it and continuing to do that until it just took him so far. So yeah, hats off to him. He's an incredible man and has done so many incredible things. So
I always say it's like panning for gold. If you really love it, and you get bitten by the bug, you never get enough. You want to go find that next nugget. It's just something that I got to get that next shot. I got to get that next, be in that next position, be in that next situation.
right,
And it's just, you just thrive on it.
right, and it's kind of like an adrenaline rush too. When you get something that you're like, well, something's happening, and you can get out and you throw your setup on the sticks, and you take off and turn the camera on. And you start shooting. I mean, there's just endless potential of, now I know what it is, but what's going to happen? And okay, I mean, it might not be anything incredible, and it might not be anything at all. I mean, whatever it was could have left, or whatever it was. But I mean, you never know what's around the next corner, and you never know what you're going to find, and you never know what could happen and where it could happen, quite literally. So just being out in the field and spending as much time out in the field as possible, it's you're going to be shocked with what you see and what you come across. Um, just like the grizzly bear and the bull elk in the Yellowstone. That happened 200 yards off the road in the middle of the river. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, wolves chasing elk across the roads, or anything. I mean, kind of like what Ben was talking about on his last podcast, with the mountain lion that he filmed, or on the podcast that you guys had Ben on with the cat that he came across on that road in Big Bend. Like, you just never know what you're gonna find. So
We've been at this for an hour and 44 minutes now. Is there anything that you guys have that you want to ask Tanner before we sign off?
No, it just sounds like you're already doing a good job beating the big guns out into the woods.
Yeah, I tell him all the time. I'm like, you're so far ahead of everybody else. I wouldn't even worry about it. He's already put himself in the right position.
yeah, I hope so. I love doing it. I mean, and spend time with you guys is great too, because I mean, it's the same thing. Even if it's not always being out in the field, I mean, you're still always learning something and doing something that's going to be beneficial towards yourself at the end of the day, and others. So
I had one last thing. We had Casey Anderson on the podcast. I don't know how many episodes ago, 3 or 4 or whatever. I recently was driving and I had to listen to a podcast, so I pulled up one of his because I hadn't listened to any of them. And he has a story in there about I think the episode is Getting Lost is what they call it. And it's kind of dry at the first part. I stuck through it and I got to the story, and it's so awesome. So if you guys are out there, the best way to find out about podcasts is for someone to tell you about it. So I just wanted to tell our audience, go check out this podcast. It's called Sidetracked with Casey Anderson. And I think on the podcast, he talked about changing the name, but I just pulled it up and it's still called Sidetrack. So I don't know if he's going to keep that or not, but I had Brandon. Brandon was over the other day at the office here, and he was listening to that particular episode, and it'll put you on the edge of your seat. And it's about getting lost in bear country. And it's just a really cool episode to listen to.
I don't want to ruin it, but it's
Yeah.
so good. Like there's just these moments where you're like, how and why? And I've done these same things. So like, I don't know. I go listen to it. It's a good story.
Okay. With that, let's sign off, and hopefully next week we'll have Jason and Ron back. And what's our next guest that we got lined up?
Ooh, I got some good ones. Let's see.
We got Christy Odom on the 31st.
That's the next scheduled one. And then I just heard from Cynthia Banduric. She is a macro photographer out of Costa Rica.
Ooh. But we got good ones coming up.
Got good ones coming up. Really excited about it.
Drew, do you have anything before we sign off?
Nope, I think it started to snow here, so my time lapse is shot.
I do have one more.
Oh, go ahead.
Those limited edition shirts and hoodies, those are still out on the website under the shop. So go check those out on the Wild and Exposed shop. We're not going to keep those up all year. So get those while they last. But we're also going to try and get another one up there, I think. A different design, maybe.
Yeah, we got an order the other day, and I was all excited because we got an order just recently, and I looked at it and it was my mom. And I was down there visiting her for her birthday, and I'm like, "What are you doing buying a?" She's like, "Well, we needed a few more hats, so I just bought some." I'm like, "Mom, I've got hats in the truck." She's like, "Oh, well, that's okay."
Amazing.
Yeah. So Tanner, thanks so much for being on the podcast, and I think you're, like I said, you're totally hitting on all cylinders. You're in the right spot. Yeah, you might have those down days, but that comes with the territory, and I don't care what you do, you're going to have down days. You are in the right position, and for your age, you're going to kill it.
Well, thanks for having me, you guys, and thank you so much for the kind words. It really means a lot to me.
You've been listening to the Wild and Exposed podcast. If you haven't yet, please give us a rating and a review, and make sure you're subscribed so that you'll get every episode we produce as soon as we drop it. And as always, thanks for tuning in.
We're gonna make it someday. Nothing's gonna get in our way. We will be the biggest band in town.